Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We haven't talked about West Asia in a while. There was just too much happening in Bangladesh, but the threat of escalation from Iran is very much alive there. Flights are being diverted, more American military assets are being deployed in the region, and some telling statements are being made. Iran's attack on Israel seems imminent. The story here is what's taking them so long and whether their proxies are still aligned. We'll discuss all of that. In Bangladesh, the caretaker government is in place and it has its work cut out. Stopping the attacks and restoring order is the first priority. India is fending off infiltration attempts. We'll tell you what's the status of the Hindu minorities there. In the UK, an interesting twist in the ongoing riots. Counter-protesters have now taken over. It just shows how deeply divided the country is. In Ukraine, the war is set to escalate. Kiev attacked inside Russian territory. The West says they had no clue, and Putin is said to be furious. In the US, is Donald Trump's running mate J.D. Vance going from being an asset to a liability? His statements and actions are not helping, it seems. Elon Musk is going after advertisers as X faces the prospect of bankruptcy. Terror group ISIS targets Taylor Swift concerts in Europe. Russia's clout in Africa is growing. We'll tell you why the Nigerian government is spooked. And astronauts went into space for 8 days, may end up being stuck there for 8 months. What are NASA and Boeing hiding? We'll discuss all of that and more. The headlines first. Israel revokes the diplomatic status of 8 Norwegian envoys, accuses Oslo of anti-Israel behavior. In the month of May, Norway had recognized Palestinian statehood. It has also backed the International Criminal Court's case against Israel over Gaza. Oslo warns that this decision by Israel will have consequences. Attend mosque 5 times a day or be punished. That's the warning by the Taliban chief to Afghan government employees. The Taliban have already imposed sweeping restrictions on women. Since the 2021 takeover, the Taliban chief runs the government from his hideout in Kandahar. A powerful earthquake strikes southern Japan. It triggered a tsunami warning, but no major damage has been reported. Japan sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire. It accounts for around 18% of the world's earthquakes. A Miss South Africa contestant quits amid a citizenship row. Her Nigerian heritage had sparked a national controversy and a government investigation. The 23-year-old took the decision a day after her mother was accused of fraud and identity theft. And India scores its 4th medal at the Paris Olympics. The men's hockey team beat Spain to win the bronze medal. With this win, they have secured back-to-back medals at the Olympics. The team also won the bronze medal at the Tokyo Olympics. This was goalkeeper P.R. Srijesh's final match for India.
مؤثرا فاعلا وبيننا وبينهم ما زالت الأيام.
It's a nervous countdown in West Asia, a countdown to an attack that feels inevitable. More military muscle is coming into the region, frantic diplomacy is underway, and airlines are staying away from the skies. All classic signs of an impending attack. The only question is the time and scale. Iran had promised to attack Israel last week. US intelligence said they would attack on Monday, but so far it's all been silent. So tonight we're looking at Iran's impending attack. What explains the delay? How is the West preparing? And will Iran's proxies stay loyal? Because the indications are the axis is divided. And don't get us wrong here. We are not saying that Iran should launch an attack. If they're showing restraint, it's great. Maybe Israel and the US should learn from them. But logic says an attack will come. The only question is how and when. Let's look at what Tehran has been doing. First, they raised the issue at the United Nations Security Council. They made their intentions quite clear. A retaliation would come. Then they began speaking to allies. On Monday, a top Russian security official visited Tehran. He was carrying a message from Vladimir Putin. And what did the Russian president have to say? Avoid civilian casualties. That was Putin's message to Iran. I wish he would heed his own advice in Ukraine, but that's a different issue. Along with the message, Russia also gave some weapons, air defense systems and radars. You can't use these weapons to attack Israel, but you can defend against a response. So maybe Tehran was waiting for these weapons. Which brings us to the third step, diplomatic support. On Wednesday, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, held a meeting. The OIC is a group of 57 Islamic countries. They claim to represent all Muslims in the world. And look at their joint statement. This is what they said. We hold Israel fully responsible for the heinous attack on Ismail Haniyeh, which constitutes a crime of aggression and a serious infringement of the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and national security of the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's what the OIC said. Their message is quite clear. Israel is completely at fault. They're not asking Iran to hold back, but Western countries are. They want Iran to de-escalate.
We don't want to see this conflict escalate. We certainly don't want to see any sort of all-out regional war. And there's not a whole lot of indications that other parties here want to see the same thing, which is why we're working really, really hard with intense diplomacy to try to avoid an escalation.
And it's not just words. The US is using military deterrence too. They have moved more assets to West Asia. One extra squadron of F-22 fighter jets, multiple Navy cruisers, naval destroyers, and land-based missile defense systems. The US is also sending a new aircraft carrier, the Abraham Lincoln. It is currently sailing in the Eastern Pacific. The US is routing it to West Asia. And don't forget, this is all additional deployment. The Americans already have a lot of assets in the region. Some 80 combat aircraft, 80, more than a dozen warships, and 4,500 sailors. So Washington is ready to step in and defend Israel. Is that why Iran is delaying? Well, it is possible. But a bigger worry would be Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu has shown that he has no red lines whatsoever, whether it's in Gaza or Lebanon or Iran. So the response must be carefully calibrated. If it's too strong, Israel may hit back hard. If it's too weak, no one will take Iran seriously. And finding that balance is tough. Maybe Iran will take a few more days to find it. Or maybe they'll find it tonight, who knows? But their proxies could be running out of patience. Just look at the Hezbollah. Israel killed their top commander last month, that too in a suburb of Beirut. Since October last year, Israel has killed more than 300 Hezbollah fighters, so they are eager to hit back.
Our response is coming. This is the first, alone or with the axis of resistance, because these hypotheses exist. We can all respond at one time, or it will depend on the interest of the axis that everyone can respond according to his time, in his own way, and up to the goals that he chooses.
That was Hassan Nasrallah, the chief of Hezbollah, and what he said is very consequential. Nasrallah says he may attack Israel alone, meaning without Iranian support, and that is a big deal. Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy group in Lebanon. They're armed and funded by Iran. It's all part of their grand axis of resistance. That's what they call it. The Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and the Hamas in Gaza. But is this so-called axis splintering? Just look at the Houthis. On Wednesday, they attacked 2 American warships in the region. Again, was this sanctioned by Iran, or are the proxies doing their own thing? It's a strategic concern for Tehran. Yes, they are godfather to these proxy groups, but godfathers are supposed to protect. Iran could not protect Ismail Haniyeh in their own capital. So why should other proxies trust them? It's a very complicated situation for the regime in Tehran. They must appease the public, they must reassure the proxies, establish deterrence, avoid escalation, and protect civilians. Which is why the retaliation is taking so long. The rest of the world will be watching closely. All we can do is prepare. Multiple airlines have started avoiding Iranian and Lebanese airspaces. Some US carriers have also stopped flights to Tel Aviv. So the signs are not looking good. We'll be tracking this story closely. Now let's talk about Bangladesh. A few minutes back, the interim government took charge. Nobel laureate Mohammad Yunus will lead it. He'll serve as the chief advisor of the country, sort of like a temporary prime minister. And what about his team? Well, along with Yunus, 16 other advisors took the oath of office today. They will have the same powers as a government minister, and none of them is a mainstream politician. These advisors come from diverse backgrounds. Some of them are professionals, others are members of the civil society. Reports say student protesters have also been inducted in this interim government. So it's quite a diverse and unlikely group to lead a country, and that too in this time of chaos. Mohammad Yunus and his team are staring at a significant challenge. Their KRA is to put Bangladesh back on track. Yunus landed in the country only this afternoon and he was given a warm reception. Yunus was greeted by both the students and the military. He had a meeting with them at the airport, and that's where the name of the other advisors were finalized, the names. So the military, the students, and Mohammad Yunus. That's the team Dhaka has got. Later in the day, they held a press conference, Yunus along with the students, and he looked quite moved. At one point, he was holding back tears.
I remember Abu Saeed today. An unbelievably courageous youth he was. His image is engraved in the hearts of every person in the country. The country has been liberated for the second time with this.
He was referring to Abu Saeed, one of the first student protesters who was killed by the police in the protests over the past month. They were violent. We saw clashes and brutal crackdowns. The police force used bullets to silence the protesters and ended up killing dozens of them. Now that the regime has fallen, the cops are missing in action. A large number of them went into hiding after Monday. Bangladesh has some 650 police stations. Local media reports say 450 stations were impacted by Monday's violence. In Dhaka alone, many police stations have been destroyed. Their windows are broken. Police vehicles and furniture have been torched. Basically, the Bangladesh police force has collapsed. So the job of policing has fallen to the army. As of this morning, Bangladeshi soldiers were guarding multiple government buildings. And Mohammad Yunus spoke about this today. He said restoring law and order was his first priority.
Our first order of business should be to restore law and order. Until that is taken care of, we will not be able to proceed to further improve the situation. You have shown faith in me, and the students here have reassured me to carry out that duty. I request the residents of Bangladesh to believe in me. If you do that, there will be not attacks at any locations in the country.
Stopping the attacks is the need of the hour, but Yunus will have to do a lot more to bring the country back on track. Look at the economy, for instance. The political chaos and churn hit Bangladeshi banks today. At least 6 banks faced protests from their own staff. And what do these officials want? They want punishment for corrupt bank owners and officials. The key target was the Bangladesh Bank. That's the central bank of the country, the Bangladesh Bank. Its governor's office was stormed today. Thankfully, the governor was not there when it happened. But the 5 other deputy governors were present, and they had to face the angry protesters. Later, the local press reported that these 5 deputy governors have resigned. This would further complicate the situation. The banking system was already showing signs of strain. Since Monday, banks have seen mass withdrawals in Bangladesh. Reports say large sums of cash have been taken out by politicians, by business owners, and by various other officials. There are no reports of bank run-ins yet, but the Bangladesh Bank is not taking chances. They've imposed limits on cash withdrawals today. At 100,000 takas, that's around $850, you cannot withdraw more than this sum. That is the limit. Officials say this restriction was only for today, but we must say that this is an evolving situation. It remains precarious, so we cannot really say what's coming tomorrow. Yunus and his team will have to monitor all of this closely. They also need to protect Bangladesh from external meddling. Sheikh Hasina's son has raised those concerns. His name is Sajib Wazid. He's a businessman living in the US. He says Pakistan is trying to meddle in Bangladesh, and the Pakistani spy agency ISI is fueling unrest in the country. So Wazid has made an appeal to New Delhi. He wants India to build international pressure and to ensure that democracy is restored in Bangladesh. More importantly, Wazid wants India's help in protecting the members of the Awami League. That's the party of Sheikh Hasina.
I had said my family will no longer be involved in politics, but the way our party leaders and workers are being attacked, we cannot give up.
Wazid had earlier said that Sheikh Hasina would never return to Bangladesh, but now he says she has changed her mind, that Sheikh Hasina has every intention to go back once democracy is restored in the country. That's how he put it. And will she return to active politics? Wazid says she has not decided yet. I'm sure she has more urgent matters to consider at the moment, like which country will give her asylum. It is safe to assume that Sheikh Hasina won't be able to return in a hurry if she returns at all. Bangladesh has taken a major turn. Chaos, conspiracy, revolution, whatever you call it, it has achieved the ouster of the Prime Minister. Now it is time to pick up the pieces and move forward. The world will be watching Yunus and his team. So Bangladesh has taken the first step. They have appointed an interim government. The next step is to restore normalcy. And India too is hoping for that, because unrest in Bangladesh is a worry for India, especially at the border. It's more than 4,000 kilometers long and very porous, the India-Bangladesh border, 4,000 kilometers. So India's border forces are on high alert, and with good reason. On Wednesday, India's Border Security Force, or BSF, thwarted an infiltration attempt. A group of 500 Bangladeshis gathered on the other side. They tried to cross over illegally, so the BSF pushed them back. However, questions remain. Why did this group try to breach the border? Were they fleeing persecution, or was it just another infiltration attempt? Well, the BSF has released a statement. Listen to what they've said. This is the Indian Border Force. Contrary to rumors, there is no widespread movement of the minority population from Bangladesh. Gatherings were due to local unrest fears. So there is no Hindu exodus to India, according to the BSF. Does that mean that minorities are safe again? Well, we can't be sure yet. Bangladesh's army has released helpline numbers for Hindus. They were also seen guarding Hindu temples. The Indian government noted these measures by Dhaka, but it also called for more protection.
I would like to emphasize and tell you that as far as we are concerned, Government of India and the people of India are concerned, for us, the interest of the people of Bangladesh is foremost in our minds. With regard to the status of minorities, there are also reports that various initiatives have been taken by groups and organizations to ensure the protection and well-being of the minorities. I would like to reiterate what External Affairs Minister had said in the Parliament. We welcome these steps, but will naturally remain deeply concerned till law and order is visibly restored.
The status of Hindus is a big issue, but the conversation is a bit extreme. One group says there is a state-sponsored pogrom. The other group says it's 100% safe for Hindus. I'm afraid the truth is somewhere in between. Some Hindus and Hindu temples have been attacked. It is a fact. We brought you a report this week. We also showed you videos of those attacks, of destroyed temples and idols. Even caretaker leader Muhammad Yunus has admitted to this.
On our way here, we heard that the law and order of the area is not being maintained. People are hurting each other, houses and properties are being burned, officers are being attacked, minorities like Hindus, Buddhists, and Christians are facing attacks too.
So attacks on minorities are happening, and it is a matter of concern. But is it a nationwide cleansing campaign? Thankfully, it's not. Hindu leaders in Bangladesh have started speaking out. They say it is not a pogrom. But we can't take that for granted, especially in the age of social media. You see, all it takes is one post or one message to light a fire, and it doesn't even have to be true. Look at this video on X. It shows a woman gagged and bound to a railing. Now look at the caption. This is what is being done to Hindus in Bangladesh. Except this video is fake. It's a scene from an Indian college drama in 2021. The man who posted it is a British politician. He leads a fringe party in the UK. He's got around 200,000 followers. This is fake. I have another example for you. This video claims that cricketer Liton Das's home was attacked. Now, Das is a Hindu and he plays for Bangladesh, but his home was not attacked. It was another piece of fake news. Needless to say, such posts do not help India. The government is already on the job. It is asking the caretaker regime in Dhaka to protect minorities. Our border forces are also on alert. They will repel any attempts to illegally enter India. So now is the time to be careful. Do not deny the fact that Hindus are being attacked, but also do not spread fake news, because this is a delicate time. Sheikh Hasina is still at a safe house in New Delhi. Her quest for asylum has hit a roadblock. Even the Indian government is not aware of her plans now.
External Affairs Minister has already explained the approval for former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to come to India was given at a short notice. The situation, as you know, is still evolving as far as Bangladesh is concerned. It would not be appropriate for me to comment on her plans.
The caretakers are in charge. They have an army willing to restore order. So let's hope they do it fast. And let's also hope that there will be justice. Remember, minority homes and temples were destroyed in the last few days. The people who did that must be punished. If not, the state will be equally complicit. Now we turn to the United Kingdom. For a few days now, that name has seemed ironic, United Kingdom, because unity wasn't really on display. In fact, it was the opposite. You could only see hate and division, because riots were breaking out all over the country. Anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant riots, they began last week because of misinformation. A 17-year-old British citizen attacked a dance studio in Southport. He stabbed multiple children and 3 young girls died in the attack. The attacker was born in Wales to parents of Rwandan origin. But social media said that he was a Muslim immigrant, which was all it took to expose Britain's fault lines. Hundreds of people believed the rumors and they began targeting mosques and immigrant shelters. Ordinary people from both these communities are terrified.
I'm a Scouser, born and bred in the city of Liverpool, but seeing the events that have just taken place in the city of Liverpool, and not just the city of Liverpool, but in the UK as a whole, it's really scary seeing the people rioting, looting the shops.
People are really scared to come out. There are a lot of ethnic minority people whom I spoke to, and they're really scared to come out.
Not just Muslim people?
Not just Muslim. I'm from India. To be honest, I can't come out and tell to the protesters or the people who are running towards me, hundreds of crowds, that, oh no, I'm not a Muslim, I'm from India, please don't spare me. That's not possible. So everyone is scared about it.
People from every minority community have been scared all over the UK. The riots began in Southport, the city where the stabbings took place, and then they spread all over the country. From Belfast in Northern Ireland, to Sunderland in northeast England, to Plymouth in the southwest. Almost every major city saw riots, and more were expected yesterday. About 100 locations were facing quote-unquote credible threats. 6,000 British police officers were mobilized. They were preparing for the worst. But then, this happened.
If we don't get no justice, then you don't get
Thousands of counter-protesters took to the streets yesterday. These are people who oppose the recent violence, people who oppose the rioters. And what do these counter-protesters want? They want to keep welcoming refugees into the UK. They want to keep promoting the idea of British multiculturalism. Yesterday, these people, the counter-protesters, were out in full force all over the UK, and they heavily outnumbered the potential rioters. Look at this picture from Brighton. There's a sea of counter-protesters, and there's a small area cordoned off by the police. They're in bright yellow vests. The police made that little bubble to protect the anti-immigrant demonstrators. Only 4 or 5 of them had shown up. And they couldn't do much. They were surrounded. The sea of counter-protesters raised slogans. They kept chanting, "Nazi scum off our streets." In fact, this chant was heard all over the UK yesterday.
You right? You good, you?
So the rioters are being called Nazis. Before this, they were labelled far-right thugs by Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He's been in damage control mode for days, but he seemed pleased with how things turned out yesterday.
Last night, I think the fact we didn't see the disorder that was feared is because we had police deployed in numbers in the right places, giving reassurance to communities.
Starmer may insist that it was all down to the police, but even the police know where the real credit goes.
It was a massive policing operation. I'm really pleased with how it went. And we put thousands of officers on the street, and I think the show of force from the police and, frankly, the show of unity from communities together defeated the challenges that we've seen. And it went off very peacefully last night.
A show of unity from communities. It was ordinary people who stopped the rioters last night, not the police, not the government, but ordinary people from all walks of life. On the one hand, it's inspirational, people coming out to support their neighbours, to protect British multiculturalism. But it's also worrying. The rioters were ordinary British people as well. Their actions show that there is simmering resentment in the UK waiting to erupt at a moment's notice. Yesterday's demonstrations may bring some joy to the scared minority communities, but it won't make Britain's division suddenly disappear. Something has to be done to address the root cause of the riots. The anger in British society needs to be addressed, or another riot will only be one social media rumour away. Let's turn to Ukraine now, where the war is set to escalate. Kiev has launched a major attack inside Russia, and Vladimir Putin is lashing out at them. This is quite a twist in the plot, because for the past 2 months, Russia had been attacking and Ukraine had been hanging on. But this week, the direction has changed. Kiev launched a daring operation against Russia. They breached Russia's borders in the Kursk region. They advanced almost 10 kilometers into Russian territory, and this is a major attack. We've seen Russia's borders breached before, yes, but that was by Russian rebels. This time, it was Ukrainian soldiers. And listen to the details. Around 1,000 soldiers crossed the border. They brought along tanks and armored vehicles, even air support. This Ukrainian convoy was backed by swarms of drones. In fact, Moscow has released some aerial footage. Take a look at this. So what's the status now? The Ukrainians managed to reach a city called Sudzha. This is now the 3rd day of fighting. Russian soldiers are trying to flush out Ukrainian troops. Chances are it will be done soon. Moscow says Ukraine has lost 82 armored vehicles, and that includes 8 tanks. But was this incursion worth the cost? Symbolically, yes, you could say, Russia is the largest nuclear power in the world. It is a country in a state of war, yet a massive enemy convoy managed to sneak in undetected. They breached 2 lines of Russian defense and 1 Russian stronghold. It's a massive intelligence and military failure. And Vladimir Putin knows this. He convened a key meeting yesterday. He was briefed by the military and the regional governor. Afterwards, he called the attack a major provocation.
We will have to start with the events in the Kursk region. As you know, the Kiev regime has undertaken another large-scale provocation and launched indiscriminate shelling of civilian buildings, residential houses, ambulances with different types of weapons, including missiles.
A couple of questions here. One, why did Ukraine launch this ambitious attack? And two, did the Western allies know about it? Well, Kiev has not said much about the operation, but we can only speculate why they did it. One reason could be tactical. Russia launched a summer offensive this year. They captured around 200 square kilometers of land in July, and the fighting has been brutal. Russian soldiers have been putting immense pressure on Ukraine, especially in the Donetsk region. So maybe this incursion is a strategy to release that pressure, to force Russia to concentrate elsewhere. And it's not just Kursk. Ukraine is also targeting Russian troops in the Black Sea. Moscow has occupied an island off Kherson. But on Wednesday, Kiev's special forces landed on this island. They destroyed Russia's armored vehicles there. Kiev also claims that Russian soldiers suffered heavy losses. So that's two fronts opened by Ukraine, both away from the main battlefield. And it is working because Moscow is calling in reservists. They're digging deep to repel Ukraine. A second reason why they did this could be political. Remember when Ukraine used drones to attack Moscow? It's the same strategy. Scare the citizens of Russia, hope they put pressure on Putin, and maybe he'll end the war. But frankly, it's a long shot. Russia has been fighting for more than 2 years. If they haven't revolted yet, they probably won't now. Which also now brings us to the second question that we asked in the beginning. Did Ukraine's allies know about this? The US claims it did not. The White House says it will seek more information from Ukraine. Europe too claims to have been blindsided here.
So we're going to reach out to the Ukrainian military to learn more about their objectives. As far as the specifics on that, I would refer you to the Ukrainians to speak about their own military operations.
We think that Ukraine is fighting a legitimate defensive war against an illegal aggression. And in the framework of this legitimate right to defend itself, Ukraine is entitled to hit the enemy wherever it finds necessary on its territory, but also on the territory of the enemy.
It's a bit hard to believe. Mounting a land attack inside Russia is very serious. Would Kiev really do that without US blessings? Highly unlikely. Also look at how the position has changed. The West was not in favor of Ukraine attacking Russian territory. They even refused long-range missiles for the same reason for the longest time. But now look at them. Ukrainian troops are 10 kilometers inside Russia, but the West says no problem. It tells you how the equation has changed. The war of attrition is taking its toll on both sides, so they're eager for some momentum. This operation may get Kiev that much-needed boost. But the repercussions could be huge because Russia now has an excuse to escalate. Our next story is about Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance. He's having a rough time on the campaign trail. Yesterday, he was in Wisconsin. Kamala Harris was also there to campaign, and they both happened to be at the airport at the same time. So Vance tried to confront Harris. He approached her aircraft, but couldn't find her. When reporters asked him about this, J.D. Vance said he just wanted to check out the vice president's plane. If this sounds bizarre, it's not his first or worst such act. And observers now say that such antics may be hurting Vance politically. Our next report tells you how.
Choosing a vice president is perhaps the first big decision any future American president makes. It conveys their political priorities. It also tells the American voter who will replace the president if they can no longer stay on the job. By that logic, Trump couldn't have done better than J.D. Vance. As one expert said, Trump picked a younger clone of himself. J.D. Vance ticks all the boxes. He embraces Trump's hardline MAGA policies. He appeals to the white working-class blue-collar voters. That's Trump's core voter bank. But JD Vance has been having a rough time connecting with the voters. A few days ago, he tried to crack a joke at a rally, but it didn't land as he'd hoped.
Democrats say that it is racist to believe, well, they say it's racist to do anything. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but I love you guys.
Yesterday, Vance was campaigning in Wisconsin. Kamala Harris was there too. Vance tried to confront her. After getting off his plane, Vance headed straight towards Air Force 2. That's the vice president's plane. When Vance's team saw him walking, they tried to catch up to him. The reporters, sensing a potential confrontation, also tried to get closer.
Can we walk over there? Hannah, can we walk over there?
But nothing came of it. When JD Vance returned, he met with the reporters. He tried to put a different spin on the event.
I just wanted to check out my future plane, but I also wanted to go say hello to the vice president and ask her why Kamala Harris why does she refuse to answer questions from the media?
You did see the vice president.
I saw her car. I did not see the vice president. The windows are...
The Democrats sense an opportunity. They are intensifying their attacks on Vance.
JD Vance actually said that people with children should be assigned more votes than people without children, and that if you have a kid, you get like an extra vote, but then you get to control that vote until they turn 18.
The internet is making things worse for Vance. A joke on the internet about a couch in JD Vance has taken a life of its own. It has led to countless memes across social media. The trend grew so big so quickly that even the Trump campaign couldn't ignore it. They had to release a statement. The Trump campaign said that they won't talk about couches at all. All this may seem quite bizarre, but it has started to affect JD Vance politically. According to a new poll, he is now the least liked VP nominee since 1980. Will this impact Trump's fortunes as well? In the past, VP candidates have derailed an entire campaign. In 2008, the Republican candidate John McCain picked Sarah Palin as his running mate. On paper, she seemed like an excellent choice, but on the campaign trail, Palin proved to be a liability. She seemed unprepared during interviews and struggled with her speeches at rallies. McCain later regretted picking her as the VP candidate. Trump, who has seen a revival in his political fortunes recently, wouldn't want to repeat that same mistake.
Last year, Elon Musk recommended a book to his fans. It was called The Capitalism Manifesto. The Tesla CEO called it a must-read. According to him, capitalism is more than a good thing. It's morally right. That's what Elon Musk has been saying. But what happens when he faces the wrath of capitalism? When advertisers exercise their free will? When they choose his competitors over Musk? Well then, Elon Musk does an Elon Musk. He throws a fit and even decides to sue them. Look at this tweet. He says, and I quote, "We tried peace for 2 years, now it is war." Not like the world needed more wars, but here we are. So what is the so-called war about? Well, for that, we'll have to go back to the year 2022. Elon Musk bought Twitter for $44 billion. Then he renamed it X. And then he transformed the platform and its content, all of which made advertisers wary. Brands did not want their ads to run alongside harmful content or misinformation, so they pulled out. Now look at the numbers. In 2022, Twitter's advertising revenue was around $4 billion. In 2023, it dropped to nearly $1.1 billion. So it is quite a drop. And it's very significant, especially for a platform that runs primarily on ad money. For X, 90% of its revenue comes from advertising. It is what keeps the business going. So this slump was not good news for Elon Musk, and he tried to stem the tide in 3 ways. His first response was defiance. Listen to this.
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go f yourself.
Some unparliamentary language there, but the gist is this. Elon Musk behaved like he did not need advertisers. That did not work out well, though. The revenue continued to slump. So Musk tried another tactic, using the B word, not the one you're thinking, but this one, bankruptcy. He apologized for his use of expletives, and he said advertisers could kill X. So he tried to bury the hatchet, basically. Even that did not work out. The advertisers did not return to X. So now Elon Musk has chosen a third way. He's gone on the offensive. It is what he does best, so you could say that he's playing to his strengths here. Elon Musk is suing a group of major advertisers. It's called the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, or the GARM. It's a voluntary initiative of the ad industry. It has over 100 advertising members. 4 of them were mentioned in the lawsuit: Unilever, Mars, CVS Health, and Orsted. Along with them, he's also suing the WFA. That's the World Federation of Advertisers. It's a trade association. X claims that the advertisers are colluding, that together they decided to boycott the platform, because of which X is losing billions in revenue. At least that's what they say. And as a headline, it does sound great. A grand battle, Elon Musk versus advertisers. But will it stand in a court of law? Can you sue advertisers for not backing you? It's a very long shot. Musk will have to show actual proof that these advertisers had an agreement, that they ganged up against X. He will have to prove that, which would be almost impossible. But let's for a moment imagine that they do, that they prove it, and that Musk wins the case. What happens then? His company may get paid for damages, but the advertisers may still not return, because you cannot force them to do so. Neither Musk nor the courts, they cannot force a company to buy ad space. So then what's the point of this case? It is classic posturing, and not a first for Musk. He seems to have made a habit of it. Last year, he sued the Center for Countering Digital Hate. He blamed it for driving away advertisers. That lawsuit was tossed out of the courts. He also sued a watchdog called Media Matters, saying it was distorting facts. That case will go on trial next year. And now Elon Musk is taking on advertisers. His company is bleeding money. He bought it for $44 billion. This year, it's getting ad revenue of less than $1 billion. Whichever way you look at it, it's very poor performance. So this case may be a last-ditch effort by Elon Musk. It may not amount to much, though. He's also trying other things like subscriptions and audio and video call service and streaming games, but none of this is plugging the ad revenue hole. Of course, he can always put in more of his own money, but then again, it's not an endless pool. At this rate, X could be staring at bankruptcy. A few years ago, Taylor Swift mentioned her biggest fear: a terror attack at one of her shows. Well, that fear may not have been unfounded, as she learned today. The pop star was supposed to perform in Vienna. She had 3 sold-out shows. 170,000 people, 170,000 people were going to watch her perform, but all of it has been cancelled. On Wednesday, Austrian police arrested 2 people. They were linked to the terror group ISIS, and they were plotting an attack on the Eras tour. Thankfully, it has been averted. But with the shows cancelled, the Swifties are heartbroken. Here's a report.
It was a day of heartbreak for Swifties. They had spent thousands of dollars, travelled for days and nights, all to make it to the Ernst Happel Stadium. It was the venue for the Eras tour in Vienna. Today, it was supposed to be packed with over 65,000 people, cheering as they catch their favourite pop star. But the stadium stands empty. There will be no Eras tour here, with 3 sold-out concerts cancelled in the city.
Yes, I'm really heartbroken. It was really bad. When I heard the news, at first I thought it was a joke. I really did not want to believe it, and then I just cried for 3 hours straight.
It's really sad, flying all the way here from the Philippines and, hearing the concert will be cancelled due to suspected terrorist attacks. It's just heartbreaking, just frustrating.
So what went wrong? Why was Taylor Swift forced to cancel the Vienna leg? Well, it was because of a terror plot. There are very few details right now, but here's what we know. On Wednesday, the police arrested a 19-year-old Austrian. Last month, he had sworn allegiance to the new leader of ISIS. A second suspect was arrested today. He is a 17-year-old. A third person was taken into custody today. He too is 17 years old. Media reports suggest there are 2 more suspects who are still at large. There's a Europe-wide manhunt for them.
According to the current state of the investigation, the suspects radicalized themselves on the internet. The 19-year-old citizen of Lower Austria swore allegiance to the current leader of IS at the beginning of July. Subsequently, the suspects made concrete preparations for a terrorist attack.
So how did they plan to attack the concert? Media reports suggest the 19-year-old had stolen chemicals from his previous employers. He had built a bomb. He planned to plow a car into the crowd outside the venue. He even considered using knives and machetes. Authorities are keeping most details secret, but the Austrian Chancellor praised the early detection of the attacks. Taylor Swift is yet to comment on it, but she's talked about this before. She said that one of her biggest fears is a terrorist attack at one of her shows. For now, the Eras Tour has promised a refund to everyone within the next 10 days.
So we're very upset, very disappointed, but we're just really happy that everyone's safe. And obviously, I mean, this is amazing. This is really heartwarming and lovely. So we're trying to look at the bright side.
Swift is currently on the Europe leg of her Eras Tour. She has already performed in 16 cities. Vienna would have been the 17th one. However, this casts a shadow on the next leg of her tour. She's supposed to perform in London from next Thursday. She has 5 sold-out concerts there. Will that be cancelled too? The UK police says they are looking at all intelligence and are on high alert. For now, her London fans hope that it won't be a cruel summer for them.
Our next story is from Africa, from the West Africa region, where a number of events are making one thing quite clear. Russian influence is on the rise. We'll look at 3 recent incidents, starting with what's going on in Nigeria. Nigeria is Africa's most populous country, and it has been rocked by protests since August 1st. The protests are an outpouring of public anger over bad governance. Nigeria is facing a cost of living crisis brought about in part by the president's policies. President Bola Tinubu. He removed a fuel subsidy last year, so fuel became expensive and it caused prices of other commodities to skyrocket. By June this year, inflation had crossed 34%. That's a 28-year high for Nigeria, and people are feeling the pinch. This is what led to the protests. Now let's pause here. So far, these problems seem completely domestic, a failure of Nigerian governance. That's what this is about. No role of an external player. But then, this happened during a recent protest. Those were Nigerian protesters waving Russian flags. They were seen demonstrating in the city of Kano, that's Nigeria's second largest city, located in the country's north. But that wasn't the only place where the Russian flag was seen. It was also raised in Kaduna by some defiant protesters.
We don't have a leader. We are the leaders. Now we don't have a leader. Someone is asking who gave us this flag? We sewed it ourselves. We don't like Tinubu. Tinubu must go. We want soldiers.
Russian flags were raised in several northern Nigerian states, and this has left the authorities worried. Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff had an emergency meeting with President Bola Tinubu, and then he issued a threat.
All of us have seen it, where some foreign flags have been flown within the sovereignty of Nigeria, and that is totally unacceptable. We are warning in clear terms, and the President has also said we should convey this, that we will not accept anybody, any individual flying any foreign flag in Nigeria. That is treasonable offense, and it will be viewed and treated as such.
Waving Russian flags in Nigeria will be considered treason. About 40 people have already been arrested across northern Nigeria. This includes the tailors who sewed the flags. And that's not all. Some foreign nationals have also been picked up. 7 Polish citizens have been detained, a lecturer and 6 students. But Poland says that its citizens were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. This seems like a knee-jerk reaction by Nigeria, but maybe they have a reason to be scared because Russian flags have been flown in West Africa before. In Nigeria's neighboring country, Niger. This happened last year, while Niger's military orchestrated a coup. Last July, Niger's military took over the country and the junta cut ties with its traditional Western partners, like France. The French were ousted. And in their place, the junta chose to ally itself with Russia. In fact, Niger is not the only country to have experienced this. It's the same story in Burkina Faso and Mali. They also went through coups in recent years, and their new military governments also allied themselves with Russia. In fact, in recent weeks, the West African nations have gotten even closer to Moscow.
Following the acknowledged and assumed involvement of Ukraine in the characterized aggression against Mali, the transitional government of the Republic of Mali decides to take the following measures. The immediate cessation of diplomatic relations between the Republic of Mali and Ukraine, the latter whose destinies are unfortunately entrusted to puppets, confusing the international scene and the theater.
Mali has cut ties with Ukraine. It cut ties after Ukraine said it helped some militants. Now, why would Ukraine do that? Because Mali is working with Russia, with Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group. They're operating in Mali. The Russians are helping Mali fight terrorists and separatist rebels in the country. Ukraine did not care about that, though. It just saw the Russian mercenaries. A Ukrainian intelligence spokesperson said that his country had helped the rebels, and those rebels carried out a devastating attack. Dozens of Malian troops and Russian mercenaries were killed in the attack. And that is what angered Mali, leading it to cut ties with Ukraine. The same anger has spread across the border to Niger. Remember, this is the same nation where Russian flags were raised last year. So we know that it was pro-Russia. Now it is also anti-Ukraine. Moscow accuses Kiev of opening an African front. If that is true, then the West African nations have chosen their side. The recent diplomatic moves and the Nigerian protesters waving the Russian flag, they show that Moscow's clout continues to grow in West Africa. Two US astronauts, Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore, were launched into space on the 5th of June in the Boeing Starliner spacecraft. The mission was supposed to last for 8 days. Instead, it may go on for 8 months. After the craft faced issues in space, NASA and Boeing said that they were fixing the problems. They also held PR stunts. They said they were confident that Starliner could bring the astronauts back. But clearly it cannot, because the pair has been stuck in space for more than 2 months. Now Boeing may be replaced with Elon Musk's SpaceX to bring Williams and Wilmore home. So what is going on behind the scenes? What is the plan forward? Will the astronauts be stuck in space till 2025? Here is a report.
June 5th, 2024. That's when Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore blasted off to space. The two American astronauts launched a test mission to the International Space Station.
And we all know that when the going gets tough, and it often does, the tough get going. So with that, LC, let's get going. Now let's put some fire in this rocket.
But the going only got tougher from here on. The astronauts were expected to be in space for 8 days, but things didn't go as planned. The spacecraft, Boeing Starliner, faced one issue after another. There were leaks in its propulsion system. Some of its thrusters started shutting down. Despite this, Williams and Wilmore safely made it to the space station. But the Starliner was deemed unsafe for their return. So, more than 2 months later, Williams and Wilmore are still floating in space. Fresh reports say they might not come back this year at all. How did it come to this? After the Starliner faced issues, multiple tests were conducted. Engineers pinpointed the problems and tried to fix them. But there was no clear update. No date of return was shared. But NASA and Boeing continued exuding confidence.
I feel confident that if we had to, if there was a problem with the International Space Station, we can get in our spacecraft and we can undock. So I have a feeling, I have a real good feeling in my heart that this spacecraft will bring us home, no problem.
Good feeling or not, the mission continued to drag out. Just last week, Boeing said that confidence remains high in Starliner's return with crew, but NASA is not buying this. Reports say there's a conflict behind the scenes between NASA and Boeing leaders. NASA is questioning Boeing's ability to bring Williams and Wilmore back home. They held a press conference this week and said that there are no firm decisions yet, but there is a backup plan which involves removing Boeing from the picture and bringing Elon Musk's SpaceX in. Needless to say, the Boeing executive was not present at the conference. But drama aside, what is the new potential plan? NASA is launching another astronaut mission in September this year. The flight will be made by a SpaceX crew, Dragoncraft. Williams and Wilmore can get on this and come back to Earth. But here's the catch. This mission will only end in February 2025, so the astronauts will have to remain in space till then. And what of Boeing Starliner? It might be returned to Earth without any crew under computer control. This will be a big blow to Boeing, which has been battling a PR crisis over its aircraft for years now. At the same time, it has been competing with SpaceX, and the latter has been in the lead. Boeing was hoping its maiden Starliner mission would change this by getting more NASA missions. But it seems highly unlikely, and that's no shocker. Thanks to this mission gone wrong, astronauts who planned to spend just 8 days in space will now be stuck there for 8 months.
You know the main characters of the US presidential race? Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. But you can't tell a story with just the main characters. You need some interesting cameos. So let me introduce Robert Kennedy Jr. He's an independent presidential candidate. You may know him from these intense gym videos. He's basically Hulk Hogan without the hair. But tonight we are talking about Kennedy's trump card, environmentalism. He worked as an environmental lawyer for many years, but his green credentials are coming under fire, and he can only blame himself. In 48 hours, Kennedy has admitted to a lot of things: dumping a dead bear in New York, hunting falcons, and having a freezer full of roadkill. We just have one question to American voters. Where do you find these upright leaders?
The discovery of a black bear by a dog walker just a few feet from Central Park's main jogging and bike path today was alarming and strange.
Police now want to know how the bear died and how it got into the park.
I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike. Now, you may think to yourself, it doesn't really matter if we destroy a creature like this because I'm never going to see one anyway.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
I picked up the bear and put him in the back of my van because I was going to skin the bear, and it was very good condition, and I was going to put the meat in my refrigerator.
Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Thousands swim across China's longest river in Wuhan for a competition. North California's Park Fire continues to burn, growing into the state's largest fire so far. And the Kiev Zoo throws a birthday feast for Tony the gorilla as he turns 50. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 1942, Mahatma Gandhi launched the Quit India movement. It was a civil disobedience movement aimed to end the British rule in India. The British resorted to violent means to thwart this movement, but it initiated widespread acts of non-cooperation. We're leaving you with that. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
worker.
Across continents, one powerful news source.
Bringing you diverse perspectives on the issues that matter.
We go beyond the boundaries to give you that little extra about every sporting moment.
So thank you for making Firstpost 5 million strong. We're counting on your support, and you can trust us to bring you the news unfiltered and unvarnished.
Climate change is on our doorstep. It's time for a revolution to take root. And it starts with 1.4 billion Indians. It starts with one tree for humanity, one tree for Mother Earth, one tree for our future. Project One Tree, a News 18 network initiative.
On the show today, the T20 World Cup bandwagon has moved across to the West Indies. What can you expect from this?
Hello, I'm Alison Green, coming to you from Durban, South Africa. Today we have a special show.
Start with a report on India's shifting nuclear posture. For the first time since India officially became a nuclear power.
Hello and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Aaron Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital,